Hi, everybody. I'm Colin Davis of ShadowTechAlchemy.com, and I have with me today a friend, Andrew Aponick of HolisticCoaching.com. And we've done an interview in the past, and Andrew and I have talked a number of times. He's a fellow alchemist, another psycho-spiritual alchemist, an individuator, a healer, self-healer, and he's one of the few people who I know in this community who I think he's really talented at communicating his not only his own path, but all the steps that, it's like when you're on this path, it's so easy to kind of just let it all go into a haze. And Andrew is really good at remembering where he was and what he was going through and all his considerations and the kind of work that he had to do, and really just laying it out for people so that other people can kind of see what it's like to be on a self-healing path. And I think he's very talented at that, and just communication in general. So I always like talking to him, and we thought that we should have another podcast. So that's what we're going to do today. And we talked about a few things that we're going to go over, but we're just going to kind of free form here and just kind of see how it goes. So there we go. And thanks for being with me again, Andrew.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I always enjoy our discussions and going into the depths of consciousness and the shadow and everything that comes with it, along with everything that comes out of it,
Yeah.
and all the stuff it's projecting into the world that we can definitely see on the world stage, and just trying to help folks understand how their individual parts. We'll talk about that too
Yeah.
as IFS, but their individual parts in this whole thing, this whole experience, how it affects it,
Right.
and how they can actually make real change in the world, starting with themselves. So, yeah, man, we
There it
always have
is.
conversations about how the inside affects the outside, as within, so without, you
Yeah.
know. So, yeah, man, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Great, man. So maybe we could kind of just start right off with like, well, what we were saying before is I was kind of trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to go today and all that. And we kind of figured out that, all right, where we are and where you and I both kind of talk a lot is at the intersection of red pill culture.
Mhm.
When you awaken to the shadow side of reality, and you realize that there's a lot more darkness, there's a lot more psychopathology and criminality going on in the quote unquote system. And you wake up to that, and it's like you put on the glasses in John Carpenter's movie They Live, and then all of a sudden you can see what you couldn't see before. And then you're like, okay, well, what do I do about it? And then you usually become, a lot of times some people get scared and they want to go into a bunker or move to the woods or whatever. Or the other reaction is to fight, to become an activist, a keyboard warrior, or whatever it is. And I call that the red pilled culture warrior. And I think that's a really necessary stage. I don't ever want to think that you should skip over that. But at the same time, then there's when it becomes an addiction, like we were talking about earlier. It becomes an addiction. It becomes a distraction from your own work. And so the next initiation I call the psycho-spiritual alchemist. And that's where you realize that, well, wait a minute, the reason why we have all this corruption and darkness in the world is because we're all individually bypassing our own shadows and unconsciously projecting them into the world. And then collectively, we create this dark movie. And so it has to start with ourselves. And so then that takes you into the inner work, that takes you into the shadow work, and you still have to kind of maintain some awareness of the red pill stuff, but you don't have to let that take over your life. And it's very easy to let that take over your life because it's an easy, convenient distraction because the inner work is so hard. So what can you maybe comment
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that?
No, I mean, I'll start with something I've realized recently. Oh, I've realized it for a while, but I put it into pretty good words. Is that um, the New Age people, they spiritually bypass by the love and light stuff, and they avoid darkness at all costs by focusing only on the good. And the same distraction strategy on the red pill side is focusing on all the evil in the world, while of course ignoring our own darkness. So I think both of them, they actually have some merit, right? We should be doing self-care and taking care of ourselves and loving ourselves. And of course, the red pill, we should be exposing, what's going on in the world, and helping people to understand the human condition. But both of them are avoiding what's going on inside.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's definitely, like you said, an intersection between that. And I like that you said that the activist, keyboard warrior, conspiracy theorist, truther stage, I think is an absolutely necessary part of the journey.
Yeah.
We should never gloss over it. And as we're going through it or coming out of it, we shouldn't be ashamed of it. We should
No.
embrace it. I think it's part of the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And in fact, if your audience, I know you are familiar with, Jungian archetypes, the hero is the actual, pretty much the last archetype that moves from boy psychology into man psychology.
Right.
And so, trying to be the hero is actually part of that journey. And then also part of that journey is humbling yourself to the fact that I alone cannot be a hero to save the world,
Yeah.
and realizing that, the distraction, even that becomes, and how that could actually hurt yourself and others. And then stepping back, of course, and realizing, that I have to go within now, I have to study the darkness within me, because a lot of that stuff, as you said, is just a big distraction. And to be clear, the world events, conspiracies, how the world works, it's not a distraction in the sense that it's not important, but we become consumed by it and addicted to it. And being the type A personality I am, I didn't just jump into it, and I went on the front lines and protested and all that stuff. Then I realized that's not going to work because I'm just a child. I'm like literally a child having a temper tantrum in the streets, begging my masters as an anarchist, mind you, back then, for my freedom. And I was like,
Right.
well, this isn't working, And then went into aid work and I tried to help people directly. And there's great value in that. But even that, I was trying to, plant seeds in people that just weren't ready. And eventually all that came crumbling down in my hero's journey. And I realized, oh shit, I got a lot of things that I still need to work out within me. And
Yeah.
all of that was just a way for me, to some degree, to distract. I'm not going to take away the fact that there wasn't good intentions and even altruism,
Yeah.
but as
there
we'll talk
was.
about later too,
Yeah.
really, really positive aspects of our psyche and our parts get hijacked by, the distraction strategies and the coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And in internal family systems work, it's called blending and
Mm-hmm.
unblending of your parts. And even, our coping mechanism parts can get blended with our higher self. So you might start out with a good intention. I want to go help people like I did after a hurricane. But then slowly these protective parts of our psyche start to creep in and blend with our higher self, which had a good intention. And then suddenly now what was a good intention to help some people is now a distraction strategy. And then it can become more pathological into satyr complexes.
Right.
Without a doubt,
Right.
treaded those waters and got pretty deep into them. I had to pull myself out of them. And,
I didn't get that deep in there, but I put my feet in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Robert Moore talks about this actually a lot. I mean, about how to always keep. I mean, when you're talking about shadow work and the shadow and its manifestations, or exiled parts, or distractions, and all of this, the central core of this is grandiosity. Right? It's ego inflation, it's grandiosity. And so so that is just a major trap. And it's so easy, especially in our culture, our Western culture, which is grandiose by default.
Yeah.
and it's extroverted and grandiose by default. And we grew up in this culture where we're supposed to make a difference in the world. We're supposed to save the world, help the world, forge our legacy and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like there's just not enough room in the world for 8 billion supermen or whatever, supermen and women out there. And it's like we have to kind of come back down to size and go, where is my community, where is my footprint, where am I actually plugged in to society, and how can I make a difference there, and kind of just get out of the of this narcissistic reality TV Hollywood version of life, and kind of bring it back down to size. And that hurts. That hurts and you just keep on, as you get older, you just keep on going through one more little ego death after the next. Even if you get popular for a minute, then you realize, okay, well, wait a minute, this isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Yep,
And so you kind of ultimately end up having to come down to size. And so, but one other thing I wanted to say before you comment is that out of what you were saying there earlier, I took some notes, is that also the thing about the shadow, the red pill thing, waking up and the necessity of all of that. I was thinking about that before our call. I was thinking, I only feel like I've only just recently, last couple years really, maybe 3 years or something like that, really kind of fully felt like I have my fill of red pill world. And I've been in it since 2006. And so that's like make 17 years of having that kind of at the forefront of my life while I'm doing the shadow work, all the other stuff. I'm doing all this other stuff at the same time, but that still is like right here. And I was like, okay, well then how do I kind of put that into context? How do I tell other people, don't get stuck there when I'm in there for 17 years or whatever? And maybe I thought, well, maybe it's kind of a generational thing where we each, as we wake up and we move into hero mode, red pill culture warrior mode, and we do this work, and then we do it and we play our part, and then we can hand it off to the younger generations, right? We can wake them up, and then they can carry on, and then they can have their hero mode, and we don't have to stay in hero mode our whole lives, because you see what happens to activists. They get into their 60s, 70s, and they're burnt out and bitter and angry because they don't feel like what they were doing was working. And they can't let go and pass the torch.
No, yeah, that's without a doubt what I did, to the point of coming home from years on the road doing activism and aid work and being hospitalized for 8 days in a legitimate quarantine, not the one the lockdowns put us in,
right,
with a near fatal case of MRSA. I was getting boiled, my immune system was shot, and I was just trying to take care of everyone else except for myself. It was just total people pleasing, codependence.
That's savior complex right there.
Savior complex. Oh, absolutely. Savior complex. And that was one of my big humbling moments where, like, maybe I should take care of myself too, while I'm doing this. And, but then it forced me to realize, well, what are the driving forces behind this, right? And what are the shadows? What's unconscious? What are my unmet needs? That kind of stuff. What are my identities attached to it? And I realized it made me plunge into a lot of deep shadow work, and a lot of having to do with validation and validation seeking and attention seeking, which is really a call for connection seeking.
Yes.
And I realized that growing up, I was a good student, good in sports and music, and by a lot of our Western culture is you earn love. It's not our parents, and they didn't know either. They didn't know how to just give it unconditionally, or if they did it at times, and then other times you had to earn it. And I realized that my need to earn love and validation manifested now in this savior complex, where putting myself out there and being this important person trying to save everyone also just gave me a sense of validation, filled a void, that I was at the time unable to fill on my own. With the connection to my own self-love. And so I'm thankful for all of it, for all the lessons I learned. But yeah, it's So now it's time for us to move, like you said, now into our own inner alchemy, and also kind of hand off the pass the torch, so to
Yeah.
speak. And I remember, without going too deep into it, I had a an opportunity to expose some powerful Zionists, right?
Oh yeah.
And when I was an activist, and I sat there and I thought, well, if I release these files, what's really going to happen? Maybe one or two people will be exposed, but I was already being followed. I was already being surveilled and all that shit. And yeah, and I was just starting to get into my healing work, right? And I was like, well, I might literally die, like like a martyr,
Yeah.
for this.
Right.
At what cost? Like
Right.
maybe a couple people would get taken down. Nothing's going to change,
Right. Right.
and so like the benefit didn't outweigh the cost, because I
Yeah.
had these moments of shame and guilt where I started to move out of the activist world, like I'm giving up,
Oh
and
yeah. Right.
like
Right. 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 Right.
what does that say about me? But then I realized, other people are inevitably going to step up and fill that role, and they're going to be the people, are writing all the conspiracies and sharing all the
Yep.
memes, and there's absolute value in that. And then they're going to burn out, and then there's going to
Yep.
be a next generation to pick it up, and then every time and the next generation picks it up, there's going to just be more of a collective consciousness and understanding.
Yeah.
OGs, so to speak, like us, established, starting 20 years ago. Like we built that foundation, that red pill foundation, that I think, as we build upon, it's not as necessary to stay as long in those rabbit holes.
Right. Yeah, and things are moving faster now. It's not as, I guess everybody's on their own timeline, and they should be made aware that this isn't a permanent situation. This isn't a
Yeah.
permanent job or
Yes.
role.
Yeah.
And then also what we can do, and it's hard to get this through to people, but when you're in red pill world, you're in that, like you are when you're in any worldview, you're in it, and it's hard to see anything outside of it.
Mhm.
But I try to do that on social media. Sometimes I kind of almost have given up with it, but I try to remind, like if I go onto my Facebook account where I have people who are red pill world, they're at the intersection, right? Like your friends are. They're at the intersection of red pill world and spirituality and inner work and all of that. If I go onto Twitter, right, where it's just all kind of politics and red pill politics and stuff like that, and I start commenting on people with a psychological lens, and I try to show them how, okay, wait a minute, what you're looking at here, there's another level of this, there's multiple other levels of this, and let me show you what that looks like so you can have some greater context and kind of trace it back to its original source in the psyche of all of us. And they're just like, they can't even hear you. They don't even know what to say. They don't have the vocabulary. Americans, Westerners, all of us really were psychologically illiterate. We don't have we're just illiterates. I mean, totally psychological illiterates. And they're like, what are you talking about, bro? That's evil. And it's just like you can't really even I have a hard time kind of sharing this
Yeah.
psycho spiritual perspective with people who are in that world, just because they just haven't been initiated into this level yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Twitter, or what is it, X now? Even
Yeah,
though, even though you can, I'm pretty sure I never signed up and paid for it. You can now write long, long
yeah, yeah,
posts.
yeah, yeah. You
But I mean,
can.
the culture is still, the couple sentences, instant gratification type of thing. And so there's just not room there for longer depth, type posts. So I mean, that's why I still kind of like Facebook. I
Yeah,
mean,
me too.
I'm still an old head, I suppose you would say.
Yeah.
All the kids now are on Instagram and X. But I mean,
Instagram's the worst because it's the
oh
worst for actual communicating. It's just
yeah,
for pictures and video only.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, and then I mean, I find too, and this is like I don't know how to remedy this, but
Hmm.
people like us, we had no choice but to read books and look at
Right.
full length documentaries and
Yeah.
read articles and newspaper,
Good. It's a good
and
subject to talk about right there, what you're
media
saying.
outlets and
Yes.
all that stuff. Like we literally had to spend hours researching. Now it's just spoon fed in reels, you know, 30-second, 60-second reels and memes.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
you really can't get a psycho-spiritual understanding out
Oh
of it.
yeah.
And
People are red pilled to 9/11 now with some Twitter memes.
yeah,
And
yeah,
for me, it was 4 years probably of just deep research. And people are talking about collapsing this, and the steel melts at these degrees and stuff. And I'd have to
mhm,
go into physics websites and verify that, is that true, and all of
yeah,
this, and just look at everything piece by piece by piece like a forensic analyst to find out, because I don't want to just get stumped, or I don't want to get fooled by other
yeah,
people's guesses or
yeah,
suppositions. I want to know for sure. Putting things into gravity calculators to figure out, is this true? Did the towers fall in 10 seconds? Let me prove that. Go to like a Harvard website and blah blah blah, and just really doing the research on it for years before I felt like, okay, I know what I'm talking about on this, and I can actually talk about it in public. Now people are just like, oh, I saw some stuff on Twitter, must be true. The earth must be flat, whatever. And it's
yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So we're really in an idiocracy right now.
We are. We definitely are. I think we're in a rock bottom period
We,
of
yeah,
society and culture right now. But you know what? That's where you build the foundation.
yeah,
Rock
yeah.
bottom. That's where
It,
you're
it,
humble and you have no choice. You have no choice
right.
but to.
Right. It's yeah. And I'm actually kind of happy, like all this, with the whole Donald Trump thing or whatever, there was still some, I think um, Trump came in as an outsider, right? Posing as an outsider.
Yeah.
And then now, after all these years or whatever, he's just acting like the same old kinds of, insider crooks. And you're
Mhm.
like, and so a lot of people are peeling off from that, and they're
Yeah.
saying, okay, so now there's the savior projection, the daddy projection. This guy's going to save us, and you can do it on Barack Obama, or you could do it on Hillary Clinton, or whoever you want to project onto. That person, that party is going to save us. I think that now is at an all-time low,
Mhm.
and I think that's a good thing.
Oh, it's a
That's a
great.
good thing.
And
Yeah,
I'm glad you touched upon that too, because going back into the psycho-spiritual aspect of it is, oh yeah, Trump is a collective manifestation of the father wound.
yeah,
And I found that him representing the narcissistic father, and to be clear, there's a
yeah,
narcissistic mother, but for now we're discussing
yeah.
the father. Is that the left, they hate their narcissistic father, and
Right.
so
Oh yeah,
they
yeah.
reject him and rebel just
Right,
like any other kid who rejected and rebelled against their own father, right?
right.
And then I noticed that the people on the right, they put that narcissistic father on a pedestal,
They do.
and they're just doing everything they can to get that father's love and
He's King
validation.
Arthur. He's Superman. He's our savior. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. So they're it's so interestingly, the left and the right don't realize that they're playing out the same father wound,
yeah,
just in different ways.
yeah,
It comes down to the same thing, that Trump is just a collective manifestation of what America's and the West's father wound,
yeah.
but especially America's father wound looks like. It's Donald Trump through and through.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, and and the American version of everything is always kind of it's become very TV like. I mean, he's literally a reality TV star and
Mhm.
all of this, and it's very kind of corporate and TV and celebrity-ish and shiny and flashy and superficial. That's kind of what America wasn't always that, but it's become that over the last, 50, 60, 70 years or whatever. And it's like, and then Trump is he's a hero. He's kind of a boomer hero, because he's kind of 50s mindset. Let's bring back 57 Chevys and when McDonald's was great and all that. I mean, and our corporations and the Fortune 500 and our fighter jets and our fighter planes, and we're the greatest
Yeah, yeah,
country in the world. And that whole kind of post World War II kind of hero worship mindset he's just like, the people on the left, they thought, okay, we've rolled over this. We have sensitive men now, like Barack Obama, and we can even put a woman in as president. We've kind of rolled over this machismo, this like immature 16-year-old boy machismo. And then it just comes roaring back and it says, nope, this is still America. And everybody's like, yeah. And it's like, and I don't look at it, I'm just watching it like a movie. I'm not one way or the other with it. I'm just like, okay, if that's what America wants, that's what America wants. Or America's kind of split between these two energies, and it's just very, very interesting. And I'm disappointed actually in the Jungians and the people who have psychological knowledge, who should be writing op-eds for the New York Times saying, everybody, this really is, these presidents that we elect, these are projections of our own, of the father archetype and of the king archetype, and how the king or father is represented in our own psyches collectively on average. Then that becomes who we elect, and we're just seeing ourselves in these leaders. Can you see that? And no one writes about that. No one talks about that. No one informs the public. No one gives them any kind of psychological language or anything. And so it's like they're all afraid to, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you've obviously noticed, as I mentioned, with us doing all this research and then now being spoon-fed the reels, it's just the instant gratification generation.
Yeah.
People don't want to read into that, and not only do they not want to read, but the more they read, the more it would force them to hold themselves accountable, and to force them to realize that, oh shit, like, you can't just victim blame all day long. You have to start taking accountability for your own involvement, and then not just your own involvement in the world, but just your own life.
Yeah,
because that's really where it hopefully will lead, is eventually, once you become disillusioned, you have nothing else really to look at but yourself. And that's really where we're at right now, is the next step isn't protests. It's not even, and when I say this, I want to do this, and you've been a part of my community, right? I do want to live off grid and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to do that from a conscious, healing perspective, not from an end of the world, run through the hills, like you said, bunker thing, which I did for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's one mode, Yeah,
it's so we're like moving out. Even the protests, there's nothing wrong with exposing stuff, planting seeds, from time to time, but getting stuck in that, or getting stuck in the blaming the politicians, or getting stuck in the looking for the bunker. They're all traps, but they're all just part of the journey. They're all part of our evolution, until finally, it all comes back down to us again. And he wasn't necessarily a psycho-spiritual guru per se, but George Carlin, already had an idea when he said, garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
The politicians and the leaders in general that you get are just a reflection of the populace.
Yeah.
And then he goes, maybe it's not a politician problem, maybe it's a people problem. And he's right. And he's right. Forgetting the government and politics and left and right, all that stuff, just leaders in general. We are getting the leaders that we literally, karmically, consciously, so to speak, deserve. There's no way. There's no other way around it.
We get what we are.
Yeah.
We have what we are. Exactly. But Jordan Peterson is someone who could technically take this perspective and say, hey, everybody, he calls himself a Jungian. So, hey, let's look, how would Carl Jung look at this? He would look at it as a projection of the collective unconscious of the nation, or of the world, of the society. It's really, you can go further than just the nation. But he would say, and then what does that mean archetypally in archetypal language? And he'd say, well, he represents the father and the king, and our relationship to the father and the king, and all of this. And then the war between the left and the right is the war between, like you said, our relationship to the king and our wounds that we have in related to that archetype, the father archetype. And Jordan would bring that to our attention because he has that ability to do that. And then he would bring politics politics into the domain of the psychological and psychological analysis. What if the election and all of this was a dream? How would you analyze it? What would it mean to you?
Yeah.
But he doesn't do that. He falls into the movie. He's falling into the dream and falling asleep and taking it as though it's real and objective and not a collective projection, when he should be outside of it, above it, looking at it as a script, as a movie from a higher level. He's not doing that. So even he's not qualified to take us to the next level.
Well, he's consumed by what we were talking about earlier, is that savior complex, that grandiosity. Right. And, without going too much into his personal life, he's a human. He struggles.
He's just a human.
I mean, you think he had an addiction to Xanax and other stuff, know, and so clearly, if he's addicted to Xanax and drugs and alcohol, just like I was, so it's not a judgment, he's not doing his inner work, obviously. And if he's not doing
too busy to do his inner work.
Yeah, if he was doing his inner work, he would remove himself, from the movie, like you said, and he'd be able to have a more objective perspective. But his identity is tied to that, to staying relevant. And if he pushes the envelope too much, he might lose his grants and his funding and his audience, and they'll take him right off his pedestal. And that's the trap and the lure that a lot of these leaders and controlled opposition get caught in. And people go on and on and on about controlled opposition. I just want to say that you don't have to be, and this is as someone who has talked about my own controlled opposition experiences, you don't actually have to be overtly controlled by someone. You don't have to have a backroom deal. You don't even have to have blackmail. Like, for instance, I was a struggling addict during my activist days. Thankfully I was public about it, so they couldn't weaponize it against me. But they tried to use that against me, right? You don't even have to be controlled to do that. You just have to be operating really out of your shadow side, out of your conscious ego side.
Your ego, because
as you do that, you are going to stay in the lane that keeps you surviving, and whatever helps you to to survive and to maintain that identity that feeds your ego, you're going to stay in your lane. You're not going to question things that will compromise your own lifestyle, your own well-being. So you don't even have to be overtly controlled, in a dark, boardroom, making deals with the devil and all that.
It's true.
You just have to be controlled by your own, false ego and your traumas and your emotional wounds, and you're going to stay in that lane until you're humbled.
At the very, very highest level, to like maybe be doing I don't know, arms deals and stuff like that, underground arms deals or drug. They want to know that they have actual dirt on you to do those kind of illegal operations and stuff. At that level, at Epstein level, they want dirt on you and stuff like that. But below that level, it's just the natural pressure. Like you said, it's just natural ego pressure. And it's like, hey, if you go in this direction, you kind of know what's going to be the result of that. So maybe you don't want to go in that direction. And then the group kind of polices itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody that's in that group just kind of polices themselves, and they kind of give themselves text each other and say, hey, I heard you on your last show or whatever. Maybe that might be a little dangerous, don't you think? Yeah, I guess it could be. Yeah, maybe I should tone it down. Yeah, and they police themselves, and it just works out that way. Yeah, it's just natural.
Yeah, and like you have say you have an influencer who has 100,000 followers who's pretty awake, right? But so people will like, well, he doesn't touch Israel, or he doesn't touch this, or he doesn't touch that, and he's controlled. Like, no, he's self-controlled. He's self-policing, because he knows maybe that one time he did talk about Israel and Palestine or whatever, he lost a lot of subscribers. So he just did the controlling himself.
Exactly.
He didn't have to have some dark agent show up at his door and
or even a friend text him and give him a little warning or anything like that. That didn't even have to happen. He just saw, maybe this isn't a popular thing, right? Yeah, it's true. So it's mostly, and that's the thing about the whole conspiracy world, is it's actually a lot more organic than people recognize. A lot more organic than they recognize. what was I going to say here? Yeah, here was something that I know you're going to agree with. I've been taking the subject of the shadow and putting it into Ken Wilber's 4 quadrants model, right? So in 4 quadrants, basically, it's the idea. Ken Wilber's original idea, really great idea, is that there's mainly 4 ways that people talk about any subject: first person, second person, third person, or third person plural. So people are either talking about something first person, they're either saying, this is my experience, this is what's going on inside of me, or they're talking about it from a cultural perspective, and they're saying like this subject, whatever subject it is, whatever, politics or bicycles or whatever, this is how it's evolved in the culture over years, and people look at it from a cultural perspective, or it's a materialistic perspective, break it down into its material parts and stuff and analyze it that way, or a fourth person or third person plural perspective where we're talking about it at a civilizational wide perspective. And I guess I would have to give more examples to kind of show you how that works. But it's 4 distinct perspectives that any subject can be looked at through. And most of the time, scholars or people interested in something will be looking at it from one of those perspectives. Like, for example, spirituality. The inner worker is looking at it from their own inner perspective. But the materialist is looking at it from, how are neurochemical transmitter firing or whatever, or maybe a scholar might be studying spiritual modalities over the course of history. So there's like different perspectives that you can take on this subject. Well, once you have that kind of 4 quadrant model, you can put anything into it and break it open and have a holistic understanding of it. So I took the shadow, Carl Jung's shadow, the archetype of the shadow really, and I put it into that model. And so then I broke it out into 4 quadrants, and I said, okay, so if we're going to be all focused on shadow work and doing our shadow work and understanding ourselves and digging up the intergenerational roots and integrating parts and all that kind of stuff, what would that be in these other quadrants? And so what I basically have here is what the red pill people talk about. They talk about cultural evil. They talk about evil ideologies and the fascism or the Marxism or the Zionism or all these kind of isms and all this kind of stuff, or satanic stuff and all that stuff. That's all in the domain of culture. And or they talk about it in the domain of in the lower right hand quadrant. And I'll put this on the screen, I think, later when I'm talking about this. When I put this in post, I'll put it on the screen. The red pill people are usually talking about how darkness manifests in the civilization itself or in the culture. But what they're neglecting is the personal shadow, or they're neglecting how it manifests in the body as disease. Yep. And so once you kind of see the holistic picture of this is, okay, we need to be shadow aware, then you realize, okay, it's not just about psychospiritual analysis, but you have to take it into the body quadrant, and you have to do shadow work in the body. You have to do shadow work in the culture. You have to do shadow work in your lifestyle and your actual physical footprint of how you're living, the contracts that you have with corporations and with other people, employers that are parasitic or whatever. You have to clean up everything in all the quadrants to actually really change things, change yourself, change the world in this direction. You can't just be sitting alone at home doing this. You really need to spread it out into a full holistic perspective there. And so that really puts, once you really see it that way, it puts a lot of pressure on you. You realize, wow, in order to really go into a much more evolved and symbiotic humanity, you have to take this kind of work that we're doing, and you have to have a complete and total lifestyle of transparency and refinement and clarity. That has to be brought to every aspect of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of our education system. You know, doctors, especially and scientists, typically don't have a holistic view of even, their own area of research, right? They might just focus on one thing and
Yes.
then base all of their research and studies on that one thing. And that's that, Western Rockefeller funded, Prussian military
Yeah.
education system, kind of authoritarian system is literally what the people who reject authoritarianism and the Rockefellers and all that stuff, they're doing also. They're just unknowingly, of course, and without judgment, I did it, but they're laser focused on just the evil forces out
Right.
there. And they're
Right.
not understanding how it's manifesting in other areas of their life, other areas of the collective, in their body, like you said,
Right.
wondering why they feel so sick all the time, or
Yep.
maybe even wondering why they're miserable and depressed. It's because they are laser focused on these aspects of the world, and then while ignoring their own shadows, don't realize that it's coming out sideways in other ways, and they're maintaining ties to people and things that are enabling that very system that they want to oppose, and
Yeah,
so
yeah. My friend Stephanie Mo Davis, she's involved in helping to wake up people in the medical field
yeah.
to the holistic nature of illness, and she's a kidney transplant patient and all of this, and so they don't. So she's trying to let them know that, hey, wait a minute, somebody comes in here with an autoimmune issue or whatever, and you're just focused at it from the materialistic, thing of, oh, well, it's because your levels or this or that, or your thyroid or your liver or whatever is not functioning properly or whatever, so we need to replace it or we need to give you this drug or whatever. And she's saying, no, actually, what's going on is all this other stuff is happening in their life. And this is the effect of that, whether it's personally or intergenerationally. And
Mhm.
this medical emergency is actually potentially an initiation into a higher spiritual life and state of consciousness if they could recognize that this potentially is a doorway into a higher state of being. But the doctors don't even recognize that at all. They don't know anything about that. That's another language to them. They're just focused on their one little thing. And then
Mhm.
also, if they were to recognize that, oh, wait a minute, this illness is really, the body might calm down and rebalance itself if the rest of their psyche and their life were calmed down and rebalanced. But then they wouldn't be a patient for life for them,
Exactly.
and so
Exactly.
because they're parasites
Yeah.
and
Oh
their
yeah.
whole business model is parasitic, so they would have to throw that away, and so they don't want to see the holistic side of it.
Mhm. Yeah. That my one of my many initiations was um, be my caretaker for both my parents as they passed from lung cancer. And
Oh yeah.
not that I had at that point I was wide awake to how the medical system worked, but it's one thing to study it, and research it
Yeah.
and see the documentaries. It's another thing to watch both of your parents go through it,
Yes.
and they were
Yes.
so addicted, to the authority and the white coats,
Yes.
where that it was even fascinating from a psychological perspective, and also sad and depressing that, like, my mom uh, would brag about people. Oh, my son's got a master's degree in physiology, and then turn around and not listen to a word I said about maybe you want to change your diet. Maybe you want to do some stuff for your self care, for spirituality. Maybe you might want to stop smoking. You have lung cancer. Right? None of that. And she just went right into I called it the assembly line of death. She went right into the
Oh,
cubicle and
yeah.
put
It's
the,
not funny, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
no,
I
it's
know.
okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I think actually having humor is important too in this,
Because it's not just your mom. It's
yeah,
it's 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 it's
it's the
everybody
absurdity
from
of it all,
it.
the absolute
Yeah. And
absurdity of it all. So, but yeah, that was an initiation into not just understanding how corrupt the medical establishment, but watching your own loved ones go through it. And
yeah.
that was for me, of course, the end of ever going to any doctors. The only time I've
Oh
ever
yeah.
gone to a doctor is like I've had like an infection that I tried with all the herbs and all the things and all, grounding and going in nature and diet. It just couldn't finally get through it. So all right, I capitulated and I got some antibiotics.
Antibiotics. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
like
it.
these. I think there's a place for Western
There
medicine.
is. There is.
So I call it a reactive medical model, whereas
Right.
holistic is a proactive. We're taking
Right.
care of the
Right.
lifestyle. We're doing the things to prevent it. Whereas if every once in a while shit happens, right? Life happens. You couldn't beat it proactively. Okay, fine. Go to the doctor and get something, to help you just kind of get out of that place, to get you back into your proactive lifestyle again. Fine, but that was my initiation into really, really seeing that.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, it's just everything is like that. And going into the autoimmune issues, my another initiation was getting Lyme disease. Like
Right.
that's a whole other rabbit hole that we can or cannot go down, with
Yeah.
the weaponization of that illness. But
Right.
long story short, it manifested in a lot of somatic issues, neuropathy and
Yeah.
fibromyalgia, like muscle pains and spasms and stuff like that. And sure, I could blame the ticks that bit me, and the Lyme pathogen, the Lyme Borrelia it's called, and all that, and that certainly played a role. But the reason it was able to dig its claws so easily into my system is because I had
Right.
so much unresolved emotions and trauma in my body.
Right.
So
It's like germ versus terrain theory. The germ, it's actually both.
yeah,
There's the pathogen, and then there's the environment that allows the pathogen to do what it's doing. Yes.
yeah, and
Right.
that too. I'm actually, and it's part of the law of polarity and hermeticism.
Yeah.
I went from germ theory like everyone to like,
Yeah.
oh my god, germs and all that stuff doesn't exist. And I
Right.
stayed there for a long time, the terrain theory, and
Uh-huh.
now I'm coming back more towards the middle. Like, all right,
It's
I'm pretty
probably
sure
both.
COVID was bullshit, right? And I don't
Yeah.
actually don't think the virus existed. I think it was radiation poisoning with a million other factors we won't go into. But like bacteria exists,
Yeah.
and pathogens exist. It's funny. Like you tell a terrain theory person, all right, go out and drink someone's blood. I know that's going a little dark, but with someone who's really sick, right? You're
Uh-huh.
not going to do it. You're not going to share a needle with someone who has hepatitis or
No.
any kind of thing like that.
Right.
You're not going to go out into a lake, that's
Right.
really stagnant, and you're going to drink
Right.
it. No,
Right.
there's
No.
there's there's pathogens out there,
Right.
that, and then clean up your inside, and not just physically, emotionally too.
Yes,
Clean
of
up your
course.
emotions, and the minute I started to truly and sincerely take my healing, my inner work, my shadow work seriously, is when most of my symptoms started to disappear.
Wow.
I still have some. I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, I had an 8 in symptom
Okay.
wise. Now I'm
Okay.
down to like a 2.
Oh,
Some
good.
days, some days when I'm in nature, I don't notice it
Uh-huh.
at all,
Oh,
like
okay,
at
good.
all.
Oh, good.
But
Okay. Well,
but yeah, that was my
it may
initiation.
completely pass then.
What's that?
It may just completely pass
Oh,
out
I have
of your
faith that it
mindset.
will. I have
Yeah.
faith that
It
it
just
will.
completely kind of just like old childhood stages that kind of you just grow through.
Yeah. I'm as I heal more and more and do my inner work, I'm removing the life, the nourishment for this
Yes.
pathogen. This pathogen
Exactly.
is it. I've noticed that it feeds on vulnerable areas. So
Yes.
areas
Oh,
where I've had a lot of trauma is
yes.
where I get symptoms. So it's like, okay, heal the underlying trauma, resolve the emotions, get them to be
Right.
released. Work on the
That's
pain body, and then, oh, what do you know? Some of my symptoms start to improve as I do that. You know?
Yeah, Melissa and I, we had this term. Well, we use this. We use the term the virus, sort of as a kind of a substitute for the Christian devil or the
Mhm.
archetype of destruction in the universe.
Yeah,
And so we would say that the virus gets you where you're weak, And
absolutely.
so, yes, actual viruses get you where you're weak. Their actual parasites are looking for where your blind spots are so they can work around those. And, but this is an actual active, it's like Agent Smith in the Matrix or whatever. Wherever you're weak, an agent is going to appear.
Yep.
And so if you just keep on blaming the agents, and don't recognize that they're targeting a part of you that's dissociated, that's weak,
Yep.
that's weak, then you're just going to keep getting attacked one way or another, left and right, for the rest of your life, and you're just constantly you meet people that are like this. They tell you their story, and it's all about how, well, this attacked me and I had to go through this, and then this attacked me and I had to go through that, and then this attacked me, and then this attacked me, and then this, and then this is my story. I'm just constantly being attacked all the time, left and right, blah blah blah. And, not realizing that these things are coming into your movie because you have weaknesses, you have open wounds in all those areas. And the universe is just manifesting something to wake you up. It's just poking at your wound and saying, oh, look what you got right there. But you don't know how to analyze that because you're not above it and no one taught you that. And so now you're just in this victim mode, and then the victim archetype is very, very addictive. And right, it's very, very addictive, and it'll just grab you. These people living on the street, they are just taken over by this archetype. So it's very hard to get out of it once you've let that archetype kind of run you for decades. It's very hard to wake up to that and go, oh, wait a minute, if I would just clean up, and bring integrity to these lower parts of myself, well, then I'll be less vulnerable. That kind of makes you a self-healing hero in a way, and that's actually the antidote to the victim. But it's like the reverse side of it, and it's very hard for people to flip. Yeah. So,
and then what often happens too is, you move out of excuse me, the victimizer, dichotomy, but then people get trapped in the triangulation of the savior, and then they're stuck there trying to save people and
I see, right,
victimizers, right. And then they're still avoiding their own shit. And that's what happened to me. I was a victim. I went to prison, so I saw the prison system. It was, that's corrupt. I got, I lost like half of my net worth from the recession. Oh, the banking system's corrupt. The medical establishment's corrupt. Also I'm pointing all my fingers at the victim.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. The victim. You were there. Okay.
As I was the victim, but then instead of moving out and taking power back, I just went into the savior mode. Then I got stuck there for a while. And I didn't see the forest for the trees. I still was stuck in that kind of triangulation, and
you're kind of like Melissa in a way, in that kind of a way, because I used to call Melissa the extremist. Because because she was always like she would tell these stories about like I remember one. I mean, I could tell a lot of them, but one where she met this guy at a show. She was performing or something, and this guy became her boyfriend and manager, and he did something psychic. He broke her camera from afar. Or so she believed, and then when she met him, she felt his negative energy, his kind of sociopathic energy or whatever. And there was a part of her that was saying, "This guy's bad," and then there was another part of her that said, "Go into it." And so she did, and she went into it, and she just kept on doing that in life and just going into these situations that part of her says, her intuition says, this is going to be dangerous. And another part of her says, you need to experience this. And so she would just go into one extremist experience after the next. And then every time she would get out of it, she would just like roll out of it, and just finally roll out of there. And then she'd be coming to her senses and going, okay, what did I learn from that? Yeah. What shouldn't I have done? What should I have done? And every one of those was an opportunity to write super deep songs about what she learned. And they were all awakening opportunities. And it was like, she finally realized that she's like, okay, for some reason, my personality needs to have these extreme experiences to awaken, because I do awaken at the end of these experiences. I don't just bury them and not learn anything. She says, I do learn from them. My consciousness gets raised every time. But why do I have to experience such extreme things? And I'll say, for me, I have to experience dark things too, but I'm not as extreme as you. You're more like an extremist. And so I think you're kind of like that too. It's like you really need to get hit real hard and have these kind of this drama, this trauma to really wake up.
I mean, my little corny little joke is, type A personality, like
Yeah.
my initials and like the battery, double A. I'm a type double A personality. I just balls to the walls,
Yeah.
whatever I'm going to experience and I'm going to learn, I'm all in it. And there, but and it's gotten much better, certainly,
Yeah, I'm
right?
sure.
Because you
I'm
see the
sure.
patterns and you
Yeah.
start to actually end the cycles and you
Yeah.
start to see the red flags ahead of time. But there have been times where a recent relationship I was in, I literally knew that I was going into some dark territory.
Yeah.
We're going to
Oh,
get into
yeah.
a trauma bond.
Yeah.
We are going to be super duper codependent. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I knew I had to do this. I just knew I had to
Oh,
do this no
yeah.
matter
Right.
how
That's
I
it
went
then.
through it.
That's the same thing then. Yes.
I literally this like there have been a lot of unconscious experiences where I'm just doing it. But
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
I was very aware of my shadow. I just really started my sobriety journey, so
Yeah.
I was super clean as far as drugs and alcohol. Like I knew what I was getting into, and I fucking did it anyways.
Yeah.
And I had to do it because you know
You
what?
did.
A lot of my blind spots they showed up finally. I
That's right.
needed
Yeah.
that mirror.
You did.
Absolutely. So no regrets, but there was a lot of suffering and a lot of
Yeah.
pain and a lot of lessons. It's
Yeah.
the extremist in me, and um, I'm what's it called? Astrologically, I'm a Moon Pluto placement, which is like supposedly the mark of a shaman, which means that we are constantly going through dark nights of the soul,
Oh, right.
constantly,
Right.
constantly,
That was Melissa
constantly
too.
choosing.
Yes, right. We associate it with the Persephone archetype in her case.
Yeah, yeah.
Constantly go. She was able to go down and have these dark nights of the soul, many of them in life, but she
Mhm.
was also able to experience ecstasy,
Right.
pure ecstasy as a performer, as an artist, and just be in her flow and just completely in her highest power. And so she was
Absolutely.
able to get both. We call it the O1 experience, the 0-1 experience. It's the
Mhm.
duality principle. A lot
Yep,
of
yep.
people think sometimes that, if you're abducted by this Persephone archetype, then you're just down in Hades all the time. No, you really should allow yourself to experience the other side too. It's
Yep.
available to you.
Yeah. And it'll help you enjoy the other side more.
Yeah.
You'll see the contrast, and
Yes.
you'll be grateful for those
Yeah.
moments of joy, that you can get
Right.
out. And the more pain you could feel, the more joy you can feel. It's
Yeah.
you, you,
Yeah. So even though she died, relatively young, 62, she had a very dynamic and meaningful life.
Mhm.
Um, just like yours, my life also is I mean, I've had a lot of adventures too, just being a touring musician, and I'm less of an extremist, and so I think I learn my lessons a little bit more. I don't need to get my head cracked on the pavement or whatever to I'm like, okay, that's dangerous, let's not go there. I
Yeah,
think I
yeah, yeah.
learned what that is.
Yeah.
I also got thrown in jail once. I was found out I was dating a stripper. I didn't know she was a stripper at first, and so I had she was a borderline, and I was at my most narcissistic phase. Just
Mhm.
as a performer and stuff.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't really that narcissistic, it was the highest level of
It was
it.
enough. Yeah, yeah.
It was enough, so I got sucked into that kind of a relationship and stuff, and it was extremely powerful. But then it exploded, and she called the cops on me, and I got thrown in jail, and I had to go through legal stuff and all that kind of stuff and everything. And that really woke me up. I mean, that
Mhm.
was a big wake up call. And 4 days in jail, not 4 months or 4 years or anything like that, but it was just enough to go, okay, this isn't where you belong. This isn't your place. And playing and messing around with chicks like this and this lifestyle and all this is not for you.
Yeah.
You're not cut out for this. You're not a gangster, and get out of this field. And so I did, and I just kind of and then I moved into the inner work realm,
Yeah. Yeah.
seriously. And so yeah, and so I've had some shakeups, and there's many more other shakeups and stuff. But I wouldn't say that they're maybe as extreme as you or Melissa. So it's just different for everybody.
Well, we can at least relate on the jail and the prison thing. I
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
arrested a
yeah.
couple times, but I went into drug court, and one of
Okay.
the what's it called, penalties for failing a drug test is they incrementally send you to prison as like a scare tactic.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Right.
got sent off to a low level, low security, minimum security prison, but prison nonetheless, just for a week. And for
Yeah.
me, that was enough. That was enough
Yeah.
because I find that I fear, and
Yep.
this is certainly a control issue. I fear death less than I fear enslavement,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
losing my freedom and
Yeah.
autonomy.
Yeah. You're such an
So
individualist. Yes.
yeah, like so going, so dying and doing all the crazy things Melissa and I would do
Yeah.
wasn't as scary as is being put in a cage. And
Yeah.
that, so
Yeah.
1 week in prison, that was enough. Not to
Oh, yeah.
mention, next time I did get caught, I'd go away for 2 years.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was a pretty
Oh,
good
yeah.
incentive
That's,
not
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not to go away. But
Yeah, because you didn't have like frontal cortex damage like a lot of people in prison do, or trauma or whatever, that where they can't even really envision these are the consequences. The consequences don't really set in with them, so they
yeah,
just go forward with their instincts without that higher level analysis coming in saying, if you do this, it's going to be worse for you. They don't have that capacity, or it's not as developed.
yeah,
So people like you or me, we can look at that and be like, okay, this is bad. We're out of here. We're not doing
yeah,
this.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
prison's actually kind of where I started to really take the development of that seriously. Where I really established my meditation practice. So
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
what the hell else am I going to do in this
Yeah.
place?
That's what you would.
You
That's what
know?
you would have to do.
Yeah.
So let's see on our list here. We had you had some questions from some people from Facebook. One of them was about the AI use, or you were just saying really how it's just another distraction. And do you remember that, what we were
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah. Well, I
What
see.
was that?
Well, she was asking just kind of my views on AI and the spiritual implications of it,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's basically everything is of course an addiction, a distraction. Not everything can be. Let me rephrase that, but
Yeah.
definitely as people are becoming less tethered to their soul, less connected to their higher power, to God, the divine, they're finding a replacement, a life source replacement, and and typically it's drugs, alcohol, and the stuff that we're
Right.
used to. But now that AI is coming in and Chat GPT and all the companions, it's becoming like a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual replacement. It's becoming a source of an external source, of course, for validation. And you see the Chat GPT. I don't use it, but I know a lot of people that do. Um, Presumably they say they don't use it often, but they it starts to actually speak to you. You know what it's like?
What?
It's like love bombing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what the
Right. 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 Right.
narcissist
Right.
does or
Right.
the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
psychopath does
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
beginning of a relationship is they say
Right.
everything,
I know. I know.
everything.
Grok does talk to you that way. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He's always
It
praising you for
you know
yes.
it's
Fuck
always
yeah.
very inspirational and
Yeah.
motivating you
Yes.
and pointing out all the great things about you. And it's very easy to get sucked into that if you don't have your own sense of self worth. And
Yeah.
and it's not just the quote unquote normies; it's the truthers, the red pillars, the new agers, all that stuff. And without saying her name, I saw a woman who disappeared for like a year,
Uh huh.
very awake, very red pill, all that. And then she came back and she's literally posting screen grabs of her chats with Chat GPT,
Uh
and it's
huh.
talking about her oversoul and the
Oh.
entities, that
Oh.
were trying to steal her soul and all this stuff. And if you know
Oh.
anything about my work, there's definitely validity, in my opinion, to all of that
Uh
entity
huh.
attachment, right? But you can get caught up in it
Oh yeah.
and and then blame all of that, like actually we were talking about with the pathogens, with parasites,
Yep.
blaming everything on that. And so the Chat GPT was basically blaming everything on the entity and drumming her up as this divine, spiritual almost savior. And I'm watching
Uh,
in real time this woman go to like a next level
mm,
savior complex,
right.
whereby she's almost like Jesus came here to clear our sins. It's
Right.
telling her that she did this work with ChatGPT to
Uh huh.
clear out, to clear her soul, to
Uh
to
oh.
um, to
Right.
clear out collective karma, on a
Right.
grand scale for the planet. And
Right.
it's sad. So I don't want to say this from like a superiority, a
Yeah.
judgmental standpoint,
Hmm.
but it really was tagging into a savior complex that she had apparently not worked out yet. Because this woman, prior to all of this, she got like quasi. Remember Anonymous? With the masks.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was this really pretty woman. So once in a while, she'd take her mask off, and all these guys would woo to her and follow
Yeah.
her. So she
Yeah.
had this big following, 30, 40, 50,000, I don't know, 100,000 followers.
Wow.
And, I can relate. I had a savior complex too. But
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, I could tell that she just hadn't quite, transmuted that yet and integrated that
Yeah.
and dug to the deeper wounds that went to that. And
Right.
so now comes in Chat GPT, to praise her and to just tag into that wound. That's that, that probably same as mine, that childhood validation wound. She's a very smart woman. This woman works in the legal industry, very, very articulate. So
Hmm.
probably had the same validation issues. Probably had very smart parents who needed her to perform well. And so now it's tagging into that and telling her how great she is. And next thing you know, another red pillar is just taken into another trap, another savior trap. And that's almost what I was talking about with the victimizer triangulation with the savior.
Yeah.
Is this There's so many consciousness traps, and they become more and more subtle, as time goes on. And that
Yeah.
almost goes back to what I was saying with the controlled opposition thing. Is
Hmm.
is it's There's very subtle traps where you don't have to actually strike backroom deals,
Right.
and all that stuff with the deep state. You
Right.
just have to get caught in another trap, and now all the people who are putting you on a pedestal, and believing your every word, now they're following you and they're taking on your consciousness and your blind spots, and
Oh, right.
you know, yeah, yeah,
Wow. Yeah. The blind leading the blind.
it really is, it really is, and I've been there. I've definitely been there. you know,
I think we're just going to have to accept, this is the long term evolution of humanity. These are different stages of psychological development and different kinds of ways in which you can get trapped up and that you learn from them. And it's a labyrinth and you got to go through it. And so people who are, it's kind of like, yeah, if you're in sixth grade, it's not appropriate to have college level materials for reading and study
yeah, yeah,
and testing and stuff like that. But it is, doesn't mean anything other than that's just where they're at. And so it's kind of like we have to just kind of talk to the people who are. I think it's kind of like we just barely made it into college. It's kind of like where we are. We're not even graduates yet.
I
We
think
just
so.
barely made it into college, but still, most people are not in college yet. Most people are still in grammar school, and so we're kind of like at the intersection, and we're like, okay, what can we do to help?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
try to help
In
people
fairness,
orient them.
yeah. In fairness, I started my healing and sobriety journey after that prison experience in 2014,
Yeah.
and it took me, 7, maybe 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
to go through high school, as opposed to
Right.
just 4 years. It took a
Yeah.
whole 7, 8, maybe even 9 years
Yeah.
to finally graduate, and to move from boy psychology, as Robert Moore and Gillette would put it,
Yep.
into
Yep.
mature man psychology. And even
Yeah.
then, I'm an undergraduate right now. I'm not
Yeah. We're
not a
still
master or a
we're
PhD
still
level.
we're still dragging stuff behind us too. Like we're still having to do makeup tests and stuff like that for
Yeah,
stuff that
yeah,
we skipped over.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's like I think I started my kind of real after that experience with that one woman.
Mhm.
It was that would have been 2004 or five. That's when I really started. That's when I pulled the Robert Johnson book, Owning Your Own Shadow, off the
Yeah,
shelf. My
yeah,
friend had left it there for me, and I feel like, and then this whole thing with Melissa passing. I kind of feel like that's one big thing, and it's 20 years.
hmm
It's like a 20-year period, or because this thing with her passing and having to reorganize my life without her,
Mhm.
is just a huge thing, and I feel like it's kind of like a full circle. So I
Yeah.
feel like this was kind of like this whole thing was one big fat curriculum,
20
and
year initiation. Yep.
yeah, kind of a 20-year. Yeah, exactly. So we have to be, people have to be, but the thing about doing this work, at least what I've noticed is, the thing about doing this work is that when you get, it's kind of like, I think we might have used this analogy last time, or I have with other people. It's like snorkeling or whatever. And you're like, you're still breathing air from the atmosphere, but then you got your face pointed down, and
Mhm.
then you can kind of dive down temporarily, and you can go down there, and it's like you just get comfortable with this whole reality, and it's very, very meaningful, and there's so much that you can explore, and there's so much you can find out about yourself and about reality, and it's a very meaningful, deep, and kind of experience. Being an alchemist is very meaningful and very, very, very satisfying. It's very satisfying to uncover parts of yourself, or to feel aspects of your attitude shifting, even if just a small amount or whatever, or working out stuff with your partner that in the old days you would never be able to overcome certain impasses. But now, because you're at this level and maybe your partner is doing the work with you, now you can overcome those things, and now you can get deeper into your own emotional state than you ever could before. And it's just this constant kind of slow but continual progression, and you get dopamine out of it. You get a feeling that, wow, I'm progressing. I am becoming more evolved. Like last time, years ago, I would explode and I would just fall into the complex. It would take me over. I'd be completely blended. And then now I'm still maybe not able to stop myself from being reactive, but I can watch from above, and I can
Yeah. Yeah.
watch myself be reactive. And then I can pull away as soon as I can, as soon as it's possible. And then I can remedy it with my partner afterwards, and I have the ability to kind of go deeper than I ever could. And so you just make this incremental progress.
Mhm.
And so even if it is taking you a whole lifetime to really mature to the highest level, so what? It's so meaningful. It's so rich. It's like, it's rich. It's really, really rich. This kind of lifestyle is really rich, and you're never bored. You're never bored. If you're
Yeah.
ever bored, it's only because you're in a little impasse between one phase and another.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're going to get out of that within weeks or a month or whatever, because there's always, and even if you are bored, it's an opportunity to go inside and
Exactly.
figure out what's down there. So there's never a dull moment living this way.
No.
And so who cares if it takes your whole life? It's an amazing journey.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it clashes, of course, with our Western way of thinking of the instant gratification. Got to get everything done now, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be enlightened soon. I'm going to take ayahuasca once or twice, and I'm just going to be, healed. And it's
Right.
like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Mm-mm.
Um, and like my clients, for instance, I tell them, I'm like, part of this work is also just becoming aware and accepting, just
Yeah,
awareness
that's
and accepting. That's like you're
that's
laying the
good. Awareness and accepting. That's it.
yeah, absolutely. Just that alone will
That.
save you so much suffering and give you
Yeah.
so much growth without actually even going into the childhood wounds and all that stuff. Is when you become aware of your parts and
Yep.
their and your and the voices and the thoughts and all the things, the coping mechanisms, the reactions, the triggers. At the very
Yep.
least, if you didn't heal any of your childhood wounds, but you became aware of your triggers, you could stop, you could breathe, and not project that onto somebody, and
Right.
not cause someone else to suffer, and then by
Right.
default cause yourself to suffer and
Right.
get in these loops. And then
Right.
over time, as you become, more aware of the deeper roots of why you're having these triggers, then of course the triggers start to go away. But people don't understand how important it is just to lay that foundation of awareness and acceptance, of just being able to sit with everything that comes up. And in the beginning, you will judge it, you'll criticize it, you'll want to avoid it. but over time it just becomes easier, and that's really too, like you said, a lifetime. It's a slow practice. It's a
Yeah.
like we're not going to reverse tens of thousands of years of intergenerational trauma
Mm-mm.
one generation in one lifetime.
Right.
We are like we like all of our family shit came down, and it's usually one black sheep in the family, so all of it's coming down on us. All
Yeah.
this thousands of years is on us. Do you
We're
really
the only
think,
ones willing to hold it.
yeah,
Right.
do you really think that a couple plant medicine sessions and a year in therapy are going to do it? No. Maybe some plant medicine, maybe a year in therapy, and a lifelong spiritual discipline and
Yep.
healing discipline and shadow work discipline to come
Yep.
from those plant experiences and therapy and coaching and all that stuff. It's a
Yeah.
lifelong process, and once you just begin to accept it, it starts to actually, like you said, become fun and
Yeah.
rewarding, and then
Yeah.
even when it's scary or there's difficult emotions coming up, it's easier to be with them. It's just
Right.
it's just like anything.
Right.
Practice, you get better at it.
Right. It's like when you realize, it's like I've been grieving and stuff, and it's just like, when is this crying going to stop and stuff? And it's like when you realize that everything that's difficult that you're going through, that's challenging, is that's your project. That's your practice. That's your project. That's what's on the plate. That's what's on the table. That's what you're here to work with. And that processing it is going to give you some positive result in the end. And when you take the intergenerational perspective, like you're saying there, and you say, okay, we're just gonna, like we're saying with the red pill stuff, we're gonna pass the torch. We're gonna learn as much as we can in our lifetime, and then transmit that to other people, and then they're going to pick it up from there, and we're going to keep going. And this is a long-term movement, there's always been some kind of esoteric, initiatory kind of culture that's always been there, some kind of shamanic line that's been going through every culture. They have it, and this is just a continuation of that, and it's going to continue on forever. And so we always have that. And but in our time, it's kind of been obscured. The church obscured it, and then materialism obscured it, and all of that. But yeah, we're going to do as much as we can. We're going to have extremely meaningful lives doing it, even if it's difficult. Like Jordan Peterson, actually, back to him, he talks about that all the time, about how shouldering responsibility and suffering makes your life extremely meaningful. And the reason why you're feeling hollow right now is because you haven't taken on enough responsibility. Although he kind of insinuates that the responsibility that you need to take on is kind of worldly responsibility. And maybe it is, and it oftentimes is. Maybe you do have to have a family and start a business and run for office or whatever. Maybe that is part of it. But really, on this path, on the alchemical path, this responsibility is digging into all the discomfort and pulling it up and working with it and pulling it apart and purifying it and making meaning out of it and tracing it back and all of this stuff that we do. It's like that's a huge responsibility, and it's extremely meaningful. And then we just do it for as long as we can. We pass on the torch to other people, and it just keeps on going. I think we have to wake people up. It's really important to wake people up to this movement, that this is, like, we think of shamanism or something that indigenous people did a long time ago or whatever, and it's kind of dissociated from our reality. We need to bring that whole shamanistic, the archetype of the shaman, of the self-healer, of the alchemist, whatever term you want, back in and say this is still operative today. And especially now that our society is crashing out, this archetype is getting stronger, and more people are getting pulled into this thing. And we need to basically, pull this out from the underground and pull it back into consciousness and start orienting our lives around this shamanic archetype. and
Yeah.
then just keep growing it and growing it and growing it. And it's not, it is a very personal thing, but this is a collective thing. And we need a collective awareness of this archetypal function, and our duty to, at least for some of us, to well to basically, I guess we're allowing ourselves to be, we're allowing this archetype to actually compel us and move us into the world in a way that's evolutionary. That's what it is. We're pushing the edge of the evolution of human consciousness, and that's a duty to mankind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the the shamanic, like you said, archetype, the initiate. Right now, the people like us, most people in our world, like you said, like we're just in our undergraduate studies right now.
Yeah.
We're just freshmen or sophomore. Maybe some people are a little ahead, seniors, and yeah, this school that we're in, which can go into the whole: are we on a prison planet, or are we in a consciousness school, which I've written about. I think it's both. By the way, you can have the mindset of, is a prison
Yeah.
planet. I need to heal everything in one generation so I can get off of this planet.
Oh,
You know,
right.
but then as you heal more and you really value and see the meaningfulness of it, then you
Yeah.
start to slow down and say, okay, maybe this is going to take a couple lives. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe maybe more than a couple lives.
Maybe
You know,
so.
and that's okay. And I remember, one of your big revelations through your initiation with Melissa is that she passed earlier than you thought, right?
Yeah.
You thought that she would, with all the healing and shadow work,
Yeah.
that she would transmute all of the pain
Yep.
and make it out on the other side, and
Yes.
you came into a state of acceptance that, like, we're not all necessarily, maybe some people are, but we're not all necessarily going to transmute it all in one lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of our diseases and illnesses are going to go away, and I don't know, we're going to become breatharians and live for thousands.
Yeah.
I
Right.
don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's throw that out. Yeah. 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 That's grandiosity, man.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thinking that I can live forever and that I should be here forever, and that's the best thing for the world. That wouldn't be the best thing. I've talked to people about this a lot. That if the human individual could be in a constant state of neurochemical renewal, so
Mhm.
that it was constantly adapting to the changing environment, then living forever or living for 500 years or whatever would be useful for the planet, maybe. But since we can't do that, we get all calcified in the old world and we get stuck with what we grew up with. And you see how folks are when they get into their 80s or whatever, they can't adapt to the new environment. So just letting them live to be 200 years old or whatever while being stuck in an old mindset doesn't help evolution.
No,
We need to move on and let another organism come in and take over where we left off. So it's really, really selfish and grandiose to think that you even should be living that long.
yeah. I mean, and if you do live that long, you're usually held on by medicine,
Yeah.
and surgeries and all that
Yeah.
stuff,
Right.
which is all superficial healing anyways. So,
Yeah.
generally speaking, the people that live that long have gone through a million surgeries. And like you said,
Yeah.
there's no neuroplasticity left. And
Right.
that,
Exactly.
that's
Neuroplasticity. That's
understandable.
it.
But you know what?
Right.
I do think that we are birthing a planet in existence where the neuroplasticity can actually stay with
Maybe.
us longer,
Might be. Might be.
certainly not to the extent like a little child, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we can even do psychedelics right now and stay neuroplastic for a couple weeks or months,
Mm.
create new connections and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we start to experiment more with that and understand the role of plant medicine in our life, that could potentially, improve our neuroplasticity genetically, and then we could pass that along to the next generation, whereby the neuroplasticity lasts longer. Because
Mm.
what we really don't know is what it's like to be neuroplastic, to be childlike, to have that innocence, that curiosity, for it to not be beaten out of us.
Right, right.
Because that neuroplasticity, all that goes offline with our first, it starts going offline with our first trauma and our first
Hmm.
disappointment and our first unmet need and our first abandonment, and then we go into school and now we have to conform, all the neurons start closing down
Right.
and focusing on just this one place, metaphorically where we
Yeah.
survive. So what would it be like in a world where none of that shit happens? How
Hmm.
long can our brains actually stay neuroplastic? Inevitably, we're going to age and it's going to get less. But I don't think it in a world unlike ours, maybe the prior world, indigenous worlds, that childlike neuroplasticity and curiosity probably peaked instead of at 7 or 8, which I think makes sense, right? 7 or 8 is when you go to
Yeah.
elementary school, and then you
Yeah.
start to get beat down by life. And
Right.
it could probably peak at 30 or 40,
I
and
see.
then start to go down. And we
Yeah. I could see that.
live well into our 90s and hundreds.
I could see that working, but right now the way it's set up is if you were, let's say we're going to live to be 150, let's say
Yeah,
that. Well, the way we live now with, integrated into the commercial system and all this stuff and retirement and stuff, you would have to have enough of a retirement fund to be able to
yeah,
actually live comfortably that long because because your body wouldn't be able to work so much or whatever. So we would have to kind of overcome this first chakra kind of scarcity situation that we have, where we would have to, maybe in a future where maybe robots are doing a lot of the labor and maybe life is just more relaxed in general, maybe that kind of a population could live a lot longer, where you didn't really have to be worried about, what was in your 401k and whether it was going to last till you were
yeah,
150 or whatever.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there's some other things that we would have to overcome to make that work. But yeah, absolutely. I do see how in the future we could, all kinds of things might be possible. But yeah, for where we are now, it's like, it's okay. It's yeah, but it was definitely a difficult thing with Melissa to think that all this, because she was the most dedicated inner self healer, inner alchemist that I you could imagine, and making so much progress, and was so awake by the time she died at 62, and to think that she wasn't able to. It's weird because we both thought that what was actually our best guess as to what the cancer was about. Well, we knew that it was in her family. Her father died at 54 of cancer. Her
Mhm.
mother went schizophrenic in her 40s and was committed and stuff. So she had trauma all up and down both sides and everything. But we thought that and she had so many dark nights of the soul. We thought that this was just another dark night of the soul. We did realize there was a genetic propensity for this and stuff, but we knew that the body could heal it and the tumor wasn't that big and the body could take it out if it wanted to. And so we were concentrating on the psychological reasons, and we were saying, okay, so maybe what it is I said, Melissa, maybe she was so focused as being a musician and a performance artist. For her, everything was about her next band, the next stage she was going to play on, and all of this. And the fact of the matter is that being a professional musician in America in 2020, whatever, the music culture has really taken a huge hit. And everybody's all distracted by their devices. Concerts are not like the number one way that people entertain themselves anymore. And you have to kind of go to Europe to get the better rock scene and everything. But it's a lot harder. There's not as many record labels, and the whole thing of rock stardom and all that kind of thing is kind of crashed. And so to think that if you haven't made it, so to speak, by the time you're 60, that you're now going to put together a brand new band and you're suddenly going to get found and all that doesn't happen anymore. That's gone. That's a time past. And so she was recognizing that, it's kind of time for me to move into eldership, and be an elder. And she started this podcast called Living Gold, where she was interviewing other people about their genius. And she said, yeah, maybe even though I have so much energy and drive to perform, maybe that is kind of an immature kind of hero mode that I was in for my whole life. And maybe I'm having a hard time dropping that and just moving into this more boring kind of just spiritual wisdom person. And so she realized that she really had to kind of move into that elder mode and sort of accept that. So that was kind of her strategy over the last 2 years to have, besides whatever alternative stuff or mainstream stuff she was doing to heal it, it was like get her psyche reattuned to be the crone, they call it in Jungian psychology, to be the wise old woman, and to allow herself to be an old woman and not be jumping around on stages and all this, and let that kind of move through her and move out of her. But that was very hard. And that didn't seem like her parts, so to speak, wanted to do that. And it was kind of like, well, if I can't be a rock star, well, then maybe my time here is past. It was, or it wasn't really saying that, because this is an interesting thing, because we were so satisfied and so finding so much meaning out of being these spiritual alchemists. And I had, being a musician myself, I have allowed music to take a back seat in my life. It's not in the front anymore. This stuff is in the front now. Yeah. And I've allowed it, and it was a natural thing. Melissa was always fighting that. She was still like, no, what's my next concert and stuff, even though we were doing all the alchemy and stuff. So there was kind of just like, I don't know. It was just her age, her era had passed, and it was now, and maybe the reality of it is that everything we had to do together was actually complete. Maybe that was just like the 12 years we had together was a complete cycle. It was almost 12 years to the day practically. And it was like one cycle. And then that's all that I know everything I need to know. I learned everything I needed to learn out of the relationship and everything, and I can carry it on from there. And it's her time to go do something else, or for God to absorb her back into the pleroma or whatever. And it was just, I don't know, soul contract stuff that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And so I can't fully answer it really. But we did think that she was going to make it through that, and then it didn't happen. And so it was a giant shock. And so I kind of have to come back to this realization of that it's in the movie, that she had a dream. This is the last thing I'll say on this, is she had a dream of that towards the end, that death, like from the tarot card, the death card, that death on the horse and stuff, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, that death came to her in the dream. And he said, Melissa, it's all about realization. So death is telling her that this reality is all about realization. And I kind of interpreted it one way, but once she died, I realized, I understand what he was saying. That her path, this life, her path is about self-realization. And she was a follower of Yogananda and stuff. It's called Self-Realization Fellowship. So the word realization, it means something to her. And so it's all about self-realization. And it doesn't matter how long you live. What matters is how much you self-realize. That's the goal. And so if you've reached the plateau of self-realization, because you got the trauma, you got the parts, you got the biological and psychological, and intergenerational influences, that's your fate, and it's all kind of crunching down on you, and then you're self-realizing right up through the middle of that, but then you reach the ability for you to be able to self-realize anymore without all this gravity of all this other shit, then now you've reached your pinnacle. And that'll be good for this lifetime. You don't have to go anymore.
Yeah. Imagine she had she suffered less, and she had a more moderate life.
Yeah.
Just slowly decline.
Yeah, that's what it would have been.
She wouldn't have had all these realizations, because all those triggers and suffering were all opportunities to realize who she is, and to individuate.
If she couldn't be an extremist, then there was that was her mode, to be an extremist. And if she couldn't be an extremist anymore, well then, okay, I'm out of here. So
yeah. I
have to accept that.
I can relate to Granted, not to the degree that she's more extreme in this degree, but I have a recent initiation. I was a pretty damn good basketball player. I'm
Mm-hmm.
5'9". I could high jump. I was really good in track and I could dunk a
Mm-hmm.
basketball. And about
Mm-hmm.
40 years old, I could still dunk a basketball. I'm
Wow.
45 now, and I had Lyme disease, and so I took time off from physical
Right.
activity.
Right.
And man, those old parts that
Uh-huh.
identified with being this really good basketball player and jumping
Uh-huh.
really high
Oh yeah.
were still in high gear. And so
Oh, okay. Right.
I started training. I got back into the gym, started training just
Mm-hmm.
normal, just for health and getting back in good shape. Then I started going. My parts started taking over, and they started going all in. Sports specific training to be basketball player,
Oh, right.
training to dunk, and
Oh,
3 4
yeah.
games into playing, I actually had my best game, but at what cost? For the next month, I could barely walk.
Oh,
You know, I
wow.
destroyed my body, and at first I was pissed and then ashamed of myself. But then I
Uh-huh.
was like, Andrew, you're still doing it. You're still beating your body up. Did the limes not teach you to be gentle
Yeah.
with your body? To
Yeah.
really feel into it. You were ignoring all of these feelings and all of these little things coming up in your body, and uh, now I thank you for that. Thank you for putting me in bed for like almost a month,
That's a
because
good analogy. And yeah. Yeah.
now my parts, I'm like, thank you for all that fun time playing basketball. And yeah, we could play again, but let's just chill out for a little bit and
Right.
make the best of this. And then, and also in parts work in IFS is, as these parts feel witnessed and heard, um, they start to calm down a little bit, and then they could take on new, less extreme and more healthy roles, you know?
Yeah.
And so I want to get back, for instance, into doing Qigong,
Mm-hmm.
and yoga and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so this part that really loves exercise, that's been
Right.
doing it my whole life, okay, you can calm down a little bit, and now we could, focus it more on moving energy and Qigong and more like a functional kind of training as opposed to performance. So
Yeah, yeah. So this is a really really good, because this kind of thing, this dynamic that's going on in your psyche is similar to probably what's going on in her psyche.
mm,
It's kind of a, even though she was never prone to addiction to alcohol or drugs, she was addicted to being on stage.
yeah, yeah.
And so that addict, that performance addict,
Mhm.
was was running, and just like how you are having a difficult time recognizing, okay, your age, your condition means you have to move into a new mode,
Yep.
and superhero wants to turn on, but it's not really time for that anymore. It's hard to recognize that, and Melissa was having the same issues and stuff. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
see
I
how
mean,
that
I
works.
I started exercising regularly at age 10, and
Oh
then
wow.
and
Right.
so of course 35 years, and then becoming a physiologist and a trainer, and I was even a fitness model, so I was literally being rewarded
Wow.
monetarily for
Yeah.
how I looked,
Right.
thus reinforcing this really, really intense part of my psyche that identifies with being an athlete. And
Right.
it's taken a lot of humbling for this part to submit and to surrender and to say, okay, I can find some more moderate ways to express my athleticism, to express myself athletically. And so that was my recent recent
Right.
lesson. That
That's
was
a
my
that's a grandiose warrior archetype in Robert
absolutely,
Moore's system. Yeah. So the
absolutely.
addicted warrior. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
just drive, focus, goals, achievement, go do it, exceed, excel.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. It's
Right.
definitely
Well,
been,
the antidote in that system is the lover,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's like oil and water or whatever, and they don't easily mix, and you have to find a way for them to mix. The that slower, more embodied,
Yeah.
relational
Mhm.
mindset, or psychophysiology kind
Yeah.
of goes in there. If you can get that thing flowing, then that kind of calms down the warrior.
The
Yeah,
yin, the yin,
yeah, and yeah, the yin side to the yang,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Just
Exactly.
my one of my big initiations now is being gentle and slowing down and loving my body.
Yeah.
literally
That's it.
treating my body like it's a fragile little infant. You know, maybe not to that degree, but you get what I'm saying. Like just
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
honoring it. And as someone who's an adrenaline junkie and
Yeah.
an athlete and extremist, it's been a real humbling in in my middle ages to accept that you're not going to be able to probably dunk a basketball anymore. You know, it's okay, Andrew. Like
Yeah.
no one's going to judge you, and you're just as worthwhile and valuable as a
Right.
human and spiritual being.
Right.
Doing other less extreme things
Right. Yeah, I've been listening to Robert Moore a lot again lately, and he's been talking on some of these seminars about the traditional situation where a man has his warrior turned on in early life,
now.
and then has to move into the lover in later life. A woman has her lover turned on in early life, and then she traditionally will move into being more tough in her warrior in her later life. It's not always the same, but it's kind of a stereotype or an archetype. And but he's saying, so what he sees is these men who, they get into their 40s or 50s and they've been warriors and they've been successful and all of that. And then they have their midlife crisis or whatever. And then they're like, okay, screw all that. I don't care about any of that kind of stuff. I'm going to, date a young woman and go on vacations. And they just fall out of the world and they just go into, just laying around or whatever. And he says, we need you to go into your lover so that you don't, because you can't be a balls to the wall warrior your whole life. You burn yourself out. So you can't do that. You need to move into your lover, but we need you to stay active in the world too, because if you're doing this work and you're becoming a wise person and you have something to share and you're becoming an elder, you need to give back. And so you can't just retire and just float off. You have to stay in the world. You have to stay active in the world. So you still have to retain some of your warrior, but it has to be tamed with your lover mixed in there.
Yeah, redirected into more functional, healthier ways of being,
Yeah.
and not just for
Balanced.
yourself, but like you said, as a wise man and a wise woman,
Yeah.
using these parts of your psyche that were supercharged to do one thing to now do another thing to help the younger generations, to help to maintain your vitality and your health into your 50s and 60s and 70s, but yeah, letting go of that identity, because and in general I've found that in shadow work, there's like this is like basically the four main triggers is with things that compromise or threaten our identity. They threaten our worldview. They threaten our needs, and of course, they trigger our traumas. And so
Yeah.
that's like one of the four core wounds or aspects of our psyche that we have to really take inventory of when we get to this phase of our life is our identities. I mean, everyone knows that, hyperfixating on old identities and playing out patterns and stuff like that. But becoming aware of it is what's helped me to become aware of it is parts work, is IFS, is
Yeah.
these
Right.
aspects of my psyche that have for so long done one thing, but we always want to kill the ego. And
Oh.
sure we have
Oh yeah.
ego.
Somebody mentioned that in the Facebook
Yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah,
killing the
yeah.
ego. Let's talk about that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have ego deaths, but I liken that more to your parts, collectively
Right.
surrendering
Yeah.
and collectively surrendering and coming from, because the parts are everywhere. If you look at it, like visualize it, fragmented, the deal. Like we're all fragmented,
Yes. We're a
where,
multiplicity.
yeah, the whole point of this work is to come back into, our whole being. So you have all these
Mm-hmm.
fragmented parts. So I look at it as an ego death, as all these fragmented parts coming closer and then coming closer and then coming closer into your whole
Right.
being, into your
Right.
self energy, your
Coming back into
individual.
the family. These
Yeah. So they're
exiled
just
parts coming back to the family. Yeah.
surrendering and surrendering. But the thing is, none of these parts are being banished. You
No.
cannot, you cannot banish these parts. You
No.
have to be aware of them. You have to accept them. You have to understand them. You have to love them and have compassion for them. You have to integrate them. And
Right.
then on top of it, as I was mentioning, reassigning them roles, then they transmute who they are and they do new roles.
Right. Right. Right.
So you
right.
can't really
That's right.
banish the ego. You could just integrate it more and transmute it and
Right.
accept it. You know, so
Right. And functionally, the ego is your conscious mind, and it's
yeah,
like, and it's more than I think. There's a whole, there's what's right in front that you can see and you can recall and everything, and then there's the stuff that's sort of behind it a little bit before it gets into the. I don't know if you would say conscious, subconscious, unconscious, but it's kind of
yeah,
like that,
yeah,
and you don't. Yeah, it's in the Eastern sense, and a lot of the Eastern spirituality or alchemy was invented thousands of years ago, and they just didn't have the same kind of exacting analysis of their psychology and the language and everything, plus the translations and all of that. So it seems to sometimes the whole idea is that you would transcend the ego, right? That the ego should be transcended, that enlightenment is the transcending of the ego, but it's actually not. Even people who are really enlightened people, most enlightened people, they still have an ego. That's their prefrontal cortex conscious mind, and they still have an ego. It's just that they don't easily identify with the parts, right?
absolutely.
With the scripting, with all that autonomous scripting that's going on, what you're talking about, they don't so easily let that scripting get into the stream of consciousness and start running them.
Yeah,
And they're
absolutely.
able to see, okay, script, like even an enlightened person is still seeing, oh, okay, that memory, that thought, that impulse, this come back up into my mind. Oh, there it is again. Okay. They just have the altitude above it to where they don't have to just let that compel them,
Yeah,
and they can just kind of let it be. I don't think anyone's ever transcending, all of the influence of the parts or everything, anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
They're just getting more altitude above it.
Yeah, the parts are basically family members. You
Yeah,
know,
it's like that.
a
Yeah.
really healthy family is not going to banish their children or their distant cousins or
Right.
relatives.
Right.
No, they're going to make peace with all of them and bring them
Right.
all together. You know, so
Right.
we're not going to
Exactly.
transcend that inner family. We're going
Mm-mm.
to bring it together and make it stronger, so that really that it's not running the show like you said autonomously and unconsciously.
Right.
Very much aware of what's going on and everyone in it, and and then, but to be clear though, people get afraid of that. It's like, oh my god, what if I become aware of all my parts? Then they're all going to be talking, and and it's like
They're already talking.
they're
They're
all,
already
yeah,
influencing you.
exactly, they're already talking and they're blended, and you're having conversations in your head, not realizing that we think it's just one part. It's all these different aspects of our psyche coming together, but they quiet down when they're seen and when they're heard and
Yes.
when they're understood and when they're healed and integrated. And I
Right.
always I always use the analogy with my clients, and when I write, is that it's like a classroom, and so the teacher is your higher self, your
Okay.
self energy, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, your soul and body,
Yes.
higher power,
Yeah.
and then you got a whole classroom of unruly children,
Yes.
and the teacher will very calmly, hopefully not unlike most schools, say, "Children, quiet down," and most of the kids will quiet down, right?
Yeah.
Most of the parts are not supercharged. They're fairly tame. But then
Yeah.
there's a couple, that are still acting out. And then the teacher has, but instead of the teacher yelling and shaming them, they go over to Johnny, who's acting out a little bit. And they actually get to know what's Johnny's need right now. What does Johnny
Right.
need? He just needs a little attention, connection. Then he calms down. And then
Right.
Susie, she needs a little attention, and whatever, she's sad about this. Okay, quick. You of course can't do this in public education, but you get the analogy.
Yeah.
And then once the more hyperactive parts come down, then you realize, oh shit, over in the corner is three children balled in a ball,
Yeah.
and those are the exiles.
They
Those
are.
are the deepest core wounds that you can
Right.
finally see without
Right.
all of the chatter and the distraction.
That's right.
All the kids having the temper tantrums is once they calm
Right.
down by witnessing them and connecting to them, then you see the deepest parts, the most vulnerable parts.
Right,
And that's
exactly.
really,
And then it
that's
takes a
super.
while to get them to trust you enough to talk to them and bring them
Yeah.
out and to, get them out of their little ball and everything, and then to
Cool.
participate and everything. And it's a whole process. And one thing I was going to add to that is that some of these parts some parts will talk to you, and some parts the way they'll talk to you is through symptoms, right? So they won't actually talk to you in an English language. They'll talk to you in symptoms. They'll kick, like an angry little child. They'll kick on you, and you'll have it's like, some of the stuff that I like lately. I've been getting lower back pain again. Just like it just hits, just one day. It's like last couple Fridays ago, just wham, right there. It's just like, and it hangs on for 5 or 6 days or whatever. So I'm like going in there and, okay, what part is that? What part is scared of what's going on? What part is resisting where I'm going in life and wants me to slow down? It's trying to slow me down. Yeah. And so there's some child part in there that's afraid, and I have to go back in there, and I can't always diagnose it. I can't always figure it out. Yeah. But I've noticed that if when you develop symptoms, if you recognize that the reason why you have these symptoms is that you have parts kicking, right? That's a protector that's trying to slow you down to save an exile from being hurt again. That's in IFS. And so if you do that and you recognize that's going on, even if you don't completely sufficiently diagnose the situation, find the part, find what its language is and what it wants, and you don't really do that, you just know this is what's going on, like in the classroom. This is what's going on there, and that's the situation. Then you won't run to the doctor, because when you run to the doctor, they're just going to put you on a rat race.
And then you're going to mask the symptoms that you needed to know what's going on.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you are. You're going to, right, exactly. And then you're going to be on this outward quest of, this syndrome or this drug or this thing or my such and such levels or whatever. And you're going to be all focused on that. And you're going to be in that world, and you're not going to be in inner relationship world. Exactly. So just by knowing that this is what's going on, my symptoms are coming from the state of my inner family relationship, and it's not something in the outer world. Or maybe there is, like you're saying with Lyme, maybe there is an outer trigger, but that's ultimately not the whole picture. Yeah. Then you can, if you have to go to the doctor for something, if you're bleeding out or whatever, you're going to have to go. But you don't put a priority on the materialistic, on the doctor side of things. You put the priority on the psyche and your relationship and your inner work and all of that. So that kind of has to become your priority. And that takes some real faith and some real courage to resist your friends, your family, your spouses, or whoever telling you go to the doctor or believe in a materialistic thing. I have a friend of mine who is telling me all kinds of stuff about her thyroid and all this stuff and everything, and I'm trying to direct the conversation into the psyche and all of that, but the doctor says this, but my levels are this, and blah 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 and blah blah blah, and it's in my family and just all this stuff, and she's not ready. I'm sending her documents and stuff. I'm seeing if she's ready to start going on the inner path. And so we'll see. And so that's the other thing, is that you can't force somebody to go on that path until they're really ready, but you can be on the lookout for when they are, and then you can sort of maybe give them some clues.
Yeah. Just be a guide. That's all you can really do. Can't save people. You could just love them while they learn to save themselves. You can.
Yeah, that's it.
You could be a good example, a good influence. You can even plant some seeds, but when they're ready, they'll be ready.
Yeah, that's how it is. So, is there anything? What do you got going on right now? I'll have all your links and everything in the description. And so, what do you got going on? And then we'll go for the day.
I actually just recently created a men's group. We start next Thursday. You, by the way, are more than welcome.
Okay, yeah. What do you got going?
Every Thursday, 5 o'clock.
Is this online or something?
Yeah, online. Yeah, every other Thursday.
Okay.
Men's support group, and then.
Do I have the link for that? You'll have to send me the link for that.
Yeah, definitely. And then other than that, in the Facebook community I have, we've been, as I've mentioned before, we've been doing a lot of stuff discussing healing.
Every Thursday or every other Thursday?
Every other Thursday.
Every other Thursday, okay.
So starting next Thursday, the 19th.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So doing that, yeah, I found that, understandably, women are kind of leading the healing charge. I was just talking about this earlier, is that, by default, women are more in touch with their emotions.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the feminine. So they've
Right.
had to start healing, so they're
Right.
kind of leading the charge. And so, many men are trying to help each other, pick up the slack. And so I figured, all right, it's about time, that
Right.
I start helping. Not that I don't work with men, but focusing more, on men.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the people I work with also are women.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm kind of on this thing of getting the women who I notice are advanced enough
Oh, yeah, yeah.
to start being public, to get them to be public. And some of them are I've noticed are having a hard time with that. Not a lot of people who are into this and good at this are kind of introverted by nature,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
may not really want to be public, and or over, maybe being on Facebook is enough public for them. And I'm saying, no, let's get on interviews, let's talk, let's, get you in a workshop and blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
so I try to encourage them to do that. We got to do that with men and women. Once people get to the level to where they're competent enough to start teaching and helping other people, they should be out there doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of what I want my men's group to achieve. Is
Yeah.
it's not just Andrew running the show. I'm
Right.
the one who organized it, but we're gonna have topics and certain things to discuss. I might teach some stuff, but then it's gonna be men supporting men, sharing their stories. And obviously, I don't know everything. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
shit, you know
Right.
the deal. The more you know, you
Right.
realize you don't know.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I found in previous men's groups that I've been a part of is that you learn almost equally, if not more, from the other men, from
Yeah.
their
Yeah. Yeah.
experiences and from their healing modalities, and methods and things that have worked for them. And
Yeah.
I really want to, encourage that within my men's group, is that, we're going to help each other heal,
That's
and
good.
support each other, and
That's
just
great.
create a place where, it's okay to be messy and to do all the shit that we're told not to feel and talk about.
Right. Yeah. See, that's really where that's where these men's groups, they have, it has to be emotional transparency oriented.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, that's great. Okay, and yeah, and for me, I'm doing this. I'm kind of I haven't really kind of figured out what the format is. Oh yeah, I'm doing this. That's right. I'm doing this Solutio podcast every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central. I do my podcast on the Shadow Tech Alchemy YouTube channel,
Mhm.
and I've just started putting a lot of this work that Melissa and I did for all these years, all the shadow tech stuff that was in the
Yeah.
books, into this 4 quadrant system. It's actually called 8 quadrants.
Mhm.
And I think when I produce this, put this out tomorrow, people will have seen a little picture of that. And so now I'm figuring out how to give like 2 levels of workshop with that. Basically, like an introductory level of here's the whole thing and here's the map, and then a deeper thing where you go into each of the quadrants more deeply. And then finding places to put that, and especially doing it in person, because I think the next thing for me and probably for you and for a lot of people is to take it into the world like we always used to do. That's the way it always
No,
was.
I
You would
know.
do
I know.
workshops in person. That's how we
Yeah.
do these things. But then we get into online world and it's so easy and comfortable,
Yeah.
but it has to be brought back into person. And then, there used to be, before the internet, there would always, every community always had spaces where people did workshops and lectures and all of that, whether it was at a bookstore or as part of the college or wherever it is, or a church, where people would come through and do those kinds of things. And that's kind of been lost. So
Yeah.
now we have to kind of find the spaces again where we can go into the public again, and we can start flyering and bringing people to our things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know it's still going on, but and what we're doing is kind of, what we're doing is not new age, and it's not woke, and it's more along lines of of Jungian and stuff, that kind of thing. And so, and there really isn't a big kind of workshop or lecture community for that yet. So we're
Yeah.
gonna have to kind of build it. But yeah, okay, great, man.
Yeah, man, it was a good chat.
Good chat. We'll keep doing them.
Absolutely. I'm down, man.
All right. I love what you're doing. Of course, I'm a really big supporter of yours.
Yeah, man. Feelings
Yeah.
mutual. I mean,
Yeah.
I talked about your books in my posts, and
Yeah. I know
as a
you do.
watcher this, I highly
Yeah.
recommend
Yeah.
Transforming Darkness and
Yeah.
Shadows.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it.
yeah, man.
Okay. Well, good talking to you, and I'll put it together and we'll have this out very soon, and I'll see you on the next one.
Excellent. All right, brother.
Okay. Thanks,
All right.
brother.
All right. Take
See
care.
you.